The stars stretched endlessly in every direction, cold and distant. Captain Linda Hayes stood on the bridge of her ship, the distant star watching the screen that showed the empty space ahead. She had been doing survey missions for 15 years now, mapping unknown regions of space for the Galactic Coalition. Most days were boring. Most days nothing happened. Today was different. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Kira Vex, the ship's navigator. Her insect-like features clicked together as she studied her instruments. "There's an energy signature coming from deep inside the Calaris Void." Linda frowned. The Calaris Void was a place nobody went. The entire sector was filled with sensor problems and navigation hazards. Ships that went too deep sometimes never came back. The Coalition had put monitoring stations around the edges, but the center remained unexplored and unwanted. "What kind of energy signature?" Linda asked. "I don't know," Kira said. "It's faint, but it's definitely artificial. Something made by someone, not natural." Dr. Marcus Cole looked up from his science station. He was the ship's xenobiologist, always excited about discovering new things. "Captain, this could be important. We should investigate." Commander Frank Jordan shook his head. He was Linda's second in command and always worried about following the rules. "The void is off limits, Captain. Regulations say we need special permission to enter." Linda thought about it. She knew Frank was right. But she also knew that regulations were made by people sitting safely back at headquarters. Out here in the darkness between stars, sometimes you had to make your own decisions. If there was something out there sending a signal, it might be someone who needed help. "We're going in," Linda said. "Plot a course, Kira. Keep all sensors at maximum. If things get dangerous, we turn back immediately." Frank didn't argue anymore. He knew Linda well enough to understand when her mind was made up. The distant star moved forward into the void. Almost immediately, their instruments started acting strange. The star charts flickered. The navigation system showed their position jumping around randomly. It was like trying to walk straight while someone kept pushing you from different directions. "This is why nobody comes here," Frank muttered. But Kira was good at her job. She kept them on course, following the faint signal deeper into the darkness. Hours passed, then days. The crew ate their meals and slept in shifts, but everyone was thinking about the same thing. What were they going to find? "On the third day they found it, Captain," Kira said, her voice tight with excitement. "I have visual contact." The screen changed to show what lay ahead. Everyone on the bridge went silent. A ship floated in the darkness. But calling it a ship seemed too simple. It was massive, easily 3 times larger than the distant star. The hull was dark gray, covered in scars from hundreds of years of micrometeorite impacts. Sections of the outer armor were damaged, showing the layers beneath. It looked ancient and dead, a ghost drifting through the void. But what made everyone stare was the design. The ship looked wrong. Not wrong as in broken, but wrong as in different. Every ship in the Coalition had similar designs because everyone shared technology. This ship looked like it came from somewhere else entirely. The angles were different. The proportions were strange. Even the way it was built seemed alien in a way that made Linda's skin prickle. "Can you read those markings?" Linda asked, pointing at symbols on the hull. Marcus zoomed in the image. Strange letters covered a section near what might be the front of the ship. Below the letters was a symbol, something that looked like a circle with lines radiating from it. "I've never seen this language before," Marcus said. He sounded confused and excited at the same time. "It's not in any Coalition database. The ship isn't from any civilization we know." "That's impossible," Frank said. "The Coalition has records of every spacefaring species in this region. If someone can build ships this big, we would know about them." "Apparently not," Linda said softly. She couldn't take her eyes off the derelict vessel. "How long had it been drifting here? Who built it? Where did they come from? And most importantly, what happened to them?" "I'm detecting a faint power signature," Marcus said, checking his readings multiple times to make sure. "Something inside that ship is still running. After all this time, some system is still active." Linda made her decision. "We're going to dock with it. Prepare a boarding party." "Captain, we don't know what's over there," Frank warned. "It could be dangerous." "It could be," Linda agreed. "But someone built that ship. Someone tried to go somewhere and something went wrong. They've been floating in this forgotten place for who knows how long. We owe it to them to find out what happened. Besides, if some system is still working after all this time, I want to know how they built it." Frank didn't like it, but he started preparing the boarding equipment. Linda watched the derelict ship on the screen and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Real curiosity mixed with something like fear. Not fear of danger, but fear of what they might discover. The distant star moved closer, carefully matching speed with the derelict. Up close, the ship looked even bigger. The hull stretched away in both directions, disappearing into shadow. Finding a docking port took an hour. When they finally located one, it was designed differently from Coalition standard ports, but similar enough that they could make it work. "Seal is good," reported the docking officer. "Atmosphere on the other side reads as 0. The ship is completely depressurized. Full environment suits for everyone," Linda ordered. "Ryan, you're leading security. Sophie, medical support. Marcus, you're with us to analyze anything we find. Pete, I need you to look at their engineering. Frank, you have the ship while I'm gone." Frank wanted to argue that the captain shouldn't go on a potentially dangerous boarding mission, but he knew it was useless. Linda had to see this for herself. They all did. The boarding party gathered at the airlock. 6 people in environment suits carrying lights and scanning equipment. Linda checked everyone's gear personally, making sure everything worked properly. In space, a small mistake could kill you quickly. "Remember," Linda said, "we don't know what's over there. Stay together. Watch your step. If anyone sees anything dangerous, we all come back immediately. This is exploration, not heroics. Everyone clear?" They all nodded. Linda took a deep breath and opened the airlock. Beyond it was darkness and silence, a tomb floating in the void. But somewhere in that darkness was a mystery 5 centuries old, waiting for someone to finally hear its story. The boarding party stepped through the airlock and into the unknown. The darkness inside the derelict ship felt thick, almost solid. Linda's flashlight beam cut through it, showing metal walls covered in frost. Everything was frozen. Everything was silent. The only sound was the crew's breathing inside their helmets and the crunch of their boots on the frozen floor. "Emergency lights activating," Marcus said suddenly. Dim red lights flickered on along the corridor. They were weak, barely enough to see by, but they worked. After hundreds of years, they still worked. Linda felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. "How is that possible?" Ryan Parker asked. He was the security officer, a big man who looked nervous in the cramped corridor. "This ship has been dead for centuries. Motion sensors," Pete Holland said. He was the engineer, always thinking about how things worked. "The lights sensed us and turned on automatically. Someone designed this system to last." They moved deeper into the ship. The corridors were sized for beings like them, bipedal, roughly their height. The architecture was strange but functional. Signs on the walls showed directions, but the symbols meant nothing to them. Marcus took pictures of everything. After 10 minutes of walking, they found the first large room. It was enormous, stretching up 3 levels. Rows of cylindrical pods filled the space, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Each pod was connected to the walls and ceiling by thick cables and pipes. "Cryogenic bay," Dr. Sophie Grant said. She was the medical officer and moved between the pods, scanning them with her instruments. "These are suspension chambers." This was a colony ship. Linda understood immediately. This wasn't a warship or an exploration vessel. This was a ship full of people going somewhere to start a new life. Families, children, people with hopes and dreams. And something had gone terribly wrong. "Are any of them occupied?" Linda asked quietly. Sophie checked pod after pod. "No, they're all empty. Everyone left, or they were never filled in the first place." They explored more of the ship. They found living quarters, tiny rooms with beds and personal storage. Some rooms still had items in them, frozen solid. Pictures on walls showing beings that looked remarkably human. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head with eyes and a mouth. Children's toys frozen to tables. Books made of actual paper. Something Linda had only seen in museums. "They're so similar to us," Marcus said, amazement in his voice. "Look at this." They had families. They told stories. They made art. In the ship's command center, they found the main computer. It was ancient by their standards, using binary code and physical data storage. But Pete managed to power it up using the ship's still-functioning reactor. The computer came to life slowly, screens flickering with text in that unknown language. "I'm running it through the translation matrix," Marcus said, working frantically at his portable computer. "The matrix needs a large sample to work, but with all this text, it should be able to figure out the language." They waited. Minutes passed. Then the translation matrix beeped. "Got it," Marcus said. "The language is called English. The species is called human. Their home planet is called Earth. He pulled up the ship's logs. Everyone gathered around to read as the translation appeared on their screens. The story it told was heartbreaking. The ship was called the TCS Endeavor. TCS stood for Terran Colonial Ship. Terran meant from Earth. The ship had launched in the year 2284, carrying 3,000 colonists to a planet called New Hope, 20 light-years from their home. But during the journey, something went wrong with their faster-than-light drive. A cascade failure left them stranded in this region of space, unable to continue forward or return home. They managed to keep life support running for 8 months, but supplies ran low. Power systems started failing one by one. The captain's name was Ellen Morris. Her final logs painted a picture of desperate people making impossible choices. They had limited escape pods, enough for maybe a third of the colonists. The closest habitable planet was 12 light-years away. Nobody knew if the pods could make it that far, but it was their only chance. Ellen Morris made the decision. The young and healthy would take the pods and try to reach safety. A skeleton crew of volunteers, herself included, would stay behind to keep the ship's beacon running as long as possible. Maybe someone would hear it. Maybe someone would come. The last log entry was simple. This is Captain Ellen Morris of the Terran Colonial Ship Endeavor. We are 23 crew remaining. Power is failing. We have maybe a week left. To whoever finds this, we existed, we tried. We loved and laughed and dreamed of stars. Remember us. And if you can find Earth, tell them what happened to us. Tell them the Endeavor didn't give up. We stayed until the end. The log ended. Linda felt tears in her eyes. Sophie was crying openly. Even Ryan looked shaken. 563 years, Marcus said quietly. This happened 563 years ago. They stayed and kept the beacon running, hoping someone would hear. And we finally did. Pete had moved away from the group, exploring the engineering section. Suddenly his voice came over the radio, excited and confused. Captain, you need to see this. They found him in the reactor room. The fusion reactor was still running, humming softly in the frozen darkness. Displays showed power output at minimal levels, but it was stable and functioning. This is impossible, Pete said. This reactor should have failed centuries ago. But look at this design. They built in redundancy after redundancy, backup systems for the backup systems, fail-safes that activate automatically. This reactor could run for 1,000 years without maintenance. Why would they build it like this? Ryan asked. Because they never gave up hope, Linda said softly. They built everything to last because they believed someone would eventually come. They wanted to make sure the beacon kept running, that their message would be heard no matter how long it took. Marcus was scanning through more computer files. Captain, I'm finding references to Earth, but nothing about where it is. Their star charts use different reference points than ours. I can't figure out which star system is their home. Keep looking, Linda said. There has to be something. Sophie had wandered back to the medical bay, still scanning for any signs. Suddenly her voice cut through the radio, sharp with shock. Captain! I have biosigns. Something's alive in the medical bay. Everyone ran. The medical bay was through 2 sealed doors, both of which still worked despite the centuries. Inside was different from the cryogenic bay. This room had advanced equipment, all of it still powered and running. Against the back wall was a single pod, larger and more complex than the ones they'd seen before. Lights blinked on its surface. Displays showed readings that Sophie recognized as vital signs. Someone's inside, Sophie breathed. Someone's still alive. Linda approached the pod slowly. Through the frosted glass panel, she could see a shape. A human, male, young, frozen in time but alive, kept in suspended animation by systems that had refused to fail. Can we wake him? Linda asked. Sophie studied the pod's readings. Maybe, but it would be risky. This is more advanced than our medical systems. I'd need to transport the entire pod back to our ship and consult with specialists. Linda looked at the frozen man, the last survivor of the Endeavor, the last voice of 3,000 people who tried to reach the stars and failed. He had been sleeping here for over 5 centuries, alone in the dark. Get him to our ship, Linda ordered. Whatever it takes, we're bringing him home. Moving the suspension pod took 6 hours of careful work. Pete and his engineering team built a special cradle to transport it without interrupting the power supply. Every wire, every connection had to remain stable. One mistake could kill the man inside. Once aboard the distant star, Sophie set up the pod in the medical bay. She spent 2 days studying how it worked, consulting with medical specialists across the coalition through long-range communication. Everyone had an opinion. Nobody had ever seen technology quite like this. On the third day, Sophie told Linda she was ready to try. "I can't guarantee success," Sophie said. Her hands shook slightly as she prepared the revival sequence. "His body has been in suspension for 563 years. We don't know what that does to a person. He might not wake up, he might wake up damaged, or he might be fine. We just don't know. He's been alone long enough," Linda said. "Let's bring him home." The revival process took 72 hours. Sophie carefully raised his body temperature 1 degree at a time. She monitored every organ, every system, making tiny adjustments as his body slowly returned to life. Marcus stayed in the medical bay the entire time, watching and hoping. Even Frank came by every few hours to check progress. When the man's eyes finally opened, it was sudden. One moment he was frozen and still. The next moment he was gasping, fighting against the pod's restraints, panic in his eyes. "Easy, easy," Sophie said, trying to calm him. But he didn't understand her words. He thrashed and shouted in English, a language none of them spoke fluently yet. Marcus rushed forward with a translation device, clipping it to the man's hospital gown. The device would listen to his words and translate them, while speaking coalition standard language back to him in English. "It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Where am I?" the man gasped.
"What happened?"
"Where's the crew?" "You're safe," Sophie said, the translator converting her words. "You're on a coalition ship." "My name is Dr. Sophie Grant. Can you tell me your name?" The man stopped fighting. He stared at Sophie, then at Marcus, then around the medical bay at all the alien equipment and alien faces. His expression went through confusion, fear, and then something like understanding. "No," he whispered. "No, how long?" "How long was I under?" 563 years, Marcus said gently. The man made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "Everyone's gone. They're all gone." He looked at Sophie with haunted eyes. "I'm Jake Bennett, Sergeant Jake Bennett, ship security. I remember now. There was a reactor crisis. I got hurt. Captain Morris put me in the experimental pod. She said maybe if someone came, they could save me." His voice broke. "I never thought I'd actually wake up." Over the next few days, Jake recovered physically. His muscles were weak from centuries of disuse, but Sophie's treatments helped. The psychological recovery was harder. Jake had nightmares. He would wake up screaming, thinking he was still on the dying endeavor. He cried when he talked about his friends, his family, all lost to time. But slowly, with Sophie's care and Marcus's patient friendship, Jake began to adjust. He started walking the corridors of the distant star, marveling at the alien technology around him. He met the crew, learning to recognize different alien species. Kira scared him at first with her insect features, but she was kind and patient, and eventually they became friends. Marcus spent hours with Jake, learning about human culture. Jake taught him English songs, though Marcus couldn't sing them with his different vocal structure. Jake showed him pictures from the Endeavor's database, explaining human art and literature and history. He talked about Earth, about blue skies and green forests and oceans that stretched to the horizon. "We always dreamed of the stars," Jake said one evening in the observation deck. He stared out at space, still looking lost. "We wanted to know what was out there. We wanted to meet other species, learn from them, share what we knew." He laughed bitterly. "I guess I got my wish. I'm the first human to meet aliens. Too bad I'm also the last human as far as I know." "We don't know that," Marcus said. "We're going to find Earth. We're going to find your people." "It's been 500 years, Jake said. "Anything could have happened. Earth could be gone. My whole species could be extinct. I might really be the last one." Linda had been listening from the doorway. She stepped in, her expression determined. "Then we find out for sure. The coalition capital is Sanctum Prime. We're heading there now. I'm going to request permission for an expedition to find Earth." Jake turned to her. "Why would you do that? You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do," Linda said. "Your captain stayed on a dying ship, hoping someone would hear her message. She kept the beacon running for months, maybe years, just so someone would know what happened. That deserves an answer. You deserve to know if your people survived." Jake's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." The journey to Sanctum Prime took 3 weeks. Jake spent the time learning everything he could about the galaxy he'd woken up in. The coalition fascinated and worried him. 17 species working together sounded wonderful. But he read about conflicts and politics and old grudges. The galaxy was more complicated than the simple dreams of the Endeavor's colonists. What troubled Jake most was what he didn't find in the Coalition database. There was no record of Earth, no record of humans, no record of any species matching his description from his region of space. It was as if humanity had simply never existed beyond that one lost colony ship. "Marcus," Jake asked one night, "what if Earth was destroyed? What if something happened and my entire species is gone?" Marcus didn't have an easy answer. "Then at least you'll know. Not knowing is worse than a painful truth. And Jake, you're not alone. Whatever we find, we're your friends now. The crew of the distant star, we're your family." Jake smiled weakly. A human and a ship full of aliens. I guess families come in all types. When the distant star finally reached Sanctum Prime, Jake stood on the bridge with everyone else, staring at the massive planet below. Orbital stations surrounded it like a metal ring. Ships of 100 different designs flew between them. It was the heart of galactic civilization, proof that different species could live and work together. "It's beautiful," Jake said. "It's home," Linda replied, "and starting now it's your home too, come on. We have politicians to convince and history to uncover. Your story isn't over yet, Jake Bennett. It's only just beginning." Jake took a deep breath and nodded. Somewhere out there, maybe, Earth still existed. His people might still be alive, and he was going to find out one way or another. He owed that much to Captain Morris and the crew who stayed behind. He owed it to the 3,000 colonists who never reached their new world. He owed it to himself. Sanctum Prime was overwhelming. Jake had never seen so many different beings in one place. Tall ones, short ones, ones with fur and ones with scales. Some walked on 2 legs like him. Others floated or crawled or moved in ways he couldn't describe. And all of them stared at him. News of the human survivor spread across the planet within hours. Media crews wanted interviews. Scientists wanted to study him. Government officials wanted to question him. Jake felt like an animal in a zoo, something rare and strange for everyone to look at. Ambassador Quellen saved him from the chaos. The ambassador was a reptilian being with green scales and wise eyes. He appeared at Jake's temporary quarters on the 3rd day, his official robes marking his importance. "You are being treated like a curiosity," Quellen said, his translator turning his hissing speech into words Jake understood. "This is not right. You are a person, not a specimen. I would like to help you if you allow it." "Why?" Jake asked. He was tired of people wanting things from him. "What do you get out of it?" Quellen's expression changed in a way that might have been a smile. "Honesty. I appreciate that. Yes, helping you helps me politically. A diplomat who aids a lost species gains influence. But that is not the only reason. I have read the logs from your ship. Captain Morris and her crew showed great courage. You deserve the same respect they earned." Jake studied the alien ambassador. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to address the Coalition Council. Tell them your story. Ask them to help find Earth. The Council is divided on many issues, but your testimony might unite them. And if we find Earth, if your people still live, it could change the galaxy." "And if Earth is gone?" Jake asked quietly. "Then at least you fought for their memory," Quellen replied. Jake agreed. Over the next week, Quellen taught him about coalition politics. He explained which council members might support an Earth expedition and which would oppose it. He taught Jake how to speak to politicians, how to be honest but also strategic. Linda and Marcus helped too. They organized all the data from the Endeavor, creating a presentation about human history and culture. They wanted the council to see humans as people, not just an extinct species to study. Professor Nina Scott joined their cause. She was a historian who specialized in lost civilizations. When she heard about Jake, she dove into ancient coalition records, searching for any mention of Earth or humans. What she found disturbed her. "There are gaps in the records," Nina told Jake and Quellen in a private meeting. "About 600 years ago, right around when the Endeavor disappeared, there are heavily redacted files, classified at the highest levels. Something happened during that time, something the Coalition doesn't want known." "What kind of something?" Jake asked, fear creeping into his voice. "I found one reference that wasn't fully deleted," Nina said, pulling up a document on her display. "It mentions a quarantine zone in the galactic sector that matches your description of Earth's location. But all the details are blacked out." Jake felt cold. "A quarantine? Why would they quarantine Earth?" "I don't know," Nina admitted. but I intend to find out. The day of the council address arrived. Jake stood in an antechamber, wearing formal clothes that Queln had provided. Through the door he could hear thousands of voices. The council chamber was enormous, filled with representatives from every coalition species. "You can do this," Linda said, standing beside him. "Just tell them the truth." Jake nodded and walked through the door. The chamber went silent as he entered. Every eye turned to him. Jake had never felt so alone, so exposed. He walked to the speaker's platform in the center and looked up at the tiers of seats rising around him. "My name is Jake Bennett," he began, his voice amplified by speakers. "I'm human. I'm from Earth. 563 years ago, I was on a colony ship trying to reach a new world. We failed. My ship died in space. Everyone died except me, kept alive by a medical pod that somehow never failed." He told them about the Endeavor, about the 3,000 colonists with dreams of a new life, about Captain Morris and the crew who stayed behind to keep the beacon running, about waking up in a galaxy where nobody knew his species existed. "I'm asking you to help me find Earth," Jake said. "I need to know if my people survived. I need to know if I'm really the last human or if somewhere out there, my species still lives. You're a coalition of different species working together. You say you value life, that you explore the galaxy to learn and help. I'm asking you to help me." The council erupted in debate. Some species supported him immediately, moved by his story. Others argued that investigating a quarantine zone was dangerous. Still others questioned whether Earth was worth the resources it would take to find. Admiral Carl Hughes, a stern military officer from a warrior species, stood and spoke against the mission. "We don't know why that sector was quarantined. There could be good reasons: diseases, hostile forces, dangerous technology. Breaking a quarantine could endanger the entire coalition." Or, Jake countered, "the quarantine was wrong. Maybe my people were isolated unfairly. Maybe they've been trapped, waiting for someone to remember they exist. Don't I deserve to know the truth?" Queln stood and addressed the council. "This young man represents a species we thought was lost. His people built ships that could run for centuries. They showed courage in the face of death. If humans do survive, they could be valuable allies. And if they don't, we owe it to Sergeant Bennett to let him know. He has lost everything. The least we can do is give him answers." The debate lasted hours. Jake stood through all of it, answering questions, defending his request, refusing to give up. Finally, the council chairwoman called for a vote. All in favor of authorizing a limited reconnaissance mission to locate Earth and determine the status of the human species? The votes appeared on displays around the chamber. It was close, but the mission was approved. Jake felt his legs go weak. They were going to look for Earth. After 500 years, someone was finally going to check on humanity. Linda appeared beside him, helping him stay standing. "We're going," she said. "The distant star will lead the expedition. We'll find your home, Jake. What if there's nothing left?" Jake whispered. "Then we deal with that together," Linda replied. "But Jake, what if they're still there? What if you're about to reunite with your own people?" Jake didn't know which possibility scared him more. The journey to Earth took 4 weeks. Jake spent most of that time nervous and unable to sleep. He studied everything about the Sol system from the Endeavor's database. He memorized the planets, the distances, the facts about his homeworld. Earth had blue oceans and 7 continents. 8 billion people lived there when the Endeavor launched. But that was over 500 years ago. Marcus tried to keep Jake distracted with games and conversations, but nothing really helped. As they got closer, Jake became quieter and more withdrawn. Linda worried about him but understood. He was about to learn whether his entire species survived or died. Nobody could prepare for that kind of knowledge. "Approaching the Sol system," Kira announced on the final day. "Entering detection range in 5 minutes." Jake stood on the bridge, his hands gripping the railing so hard his knuckles turned white. Linda stood beside him, ready to support him whatever they found. The distant star crossed into the system. Immediately, every sensor lit up with contacts. "Captain," Kira shouted, her voice high with shock. "I'm reading multiple artificial satellites. Dozens of them, hundreds, they're everywhere around the 3rd planet. Is that Earth?" Linda asked. Jake was staring at the screen, tears running down his face. "Yes, that's home." Pete was scanning the system frantically. "Captain, I'm picking up fusion signatures. Ship drives. There are vessels in orbit, big ones, military grade by the power readings. Life signs on the planet?" Linda asked. Billions, Marcus said, his voice full of wonder. Captain, Earth is heavily populated. I'm detecting cities, industrial centers, space elevators. This isn't a dead world. This is an active, thriving civilization. Jake made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. They're alive. My people are alive, but then the situation changed fast. Captain, we have contacts, Ryan shouted from the tactical station. Multiple ships decloaking around us. They had stealth systems. They were hiding, watching us the whole time. 12 warships appeared on the sensors, surrounding the distant star. They were sleek and dangerous-looking, bristling with weapons. Each one could probably destroy the survey ship with a single shot. A voice crackled over the communication system, speaking in English. Unknown vessel, this is Earth Defense Force. You have entered restricted space. Identify yourself immediately and state your intentions. You have 30 seconds to comply before we open fire. Jake rushed to the communication console. This is Sergeant Jake Bennett, former crew member of the TCS Endeavor. I'm human. I'm from Earth. Please don't shoot. These are friends. Silence. Long, terrible silence. Then the voice came back, different now, confused.
Say again your name and ship?
Jake Bennett. TCS Endeavor, the colony ship that disappeared in 2284. I was in medical stasis. An alien crew found me and revived me. I asked them to help me find Earth. Please, we mean no harm. More silence. Jake could imagine the chaos on the Earth ships as they tried to verify his impossible story. Endeavor crew are listed as dead for 5 centuries. The voice said, How do we know you're really human? Jake thought quickly. When I was 7, my grandmother taught me a song. It's called Amazing Grace. She said humans have been singing it for almost 1,000 years. He sang the first verse, his voice shaking but clear. Another pause. Then, Jake Bennett, your genetic signature matches Earth-human baseline. You are cleared to approach. We're sending coordinates for a secure docking facility. Follow them exactly. Any deviation and we will fire. Is that understood? Understood, Jake said. Thank you. The Earth ships escorted them to a military station in high orbit. Armed soldiers met them at the airlock, weapons ready but not pointed directly at them. Jake stepped through first, his legs shaking. A woman in a military uniform approached. She was older, with gray hair and sharp eyes. I'm Admiral Kate Morrison, Commander of Earth Defense. You're really from the Endeavor? Yes, ma'am, Jake said. Kate studied him for a long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, she pulled him into a hug. Welcome home, soldier. You've been gone a long time. Over the next hours, Jake and the crew were processed and cleared. Medical scans confirmed Jake was human. The crew's story was verified through multiple interviews. Finally, they were cleared to meet with Earth's government. President Andrew Chen met them in a secure conference room deep inside the orbital station. He was a middle-aged man with tired eyes. Mr. Bennett, Captain Hayes, welcome. I imagine you have questions. Just one, Jake said. Why was Earth isolated? We found records of a quarantine. What happened? Andrew's expression darkened. About 580 years ago, we made first contact with an alien species. They called themselves the Vrin. We were excited, hopeful. We thought we were finally joining the galactic community. But it went wrong, Linda said quietly. Very wrong, Andrew confirmed. There were misunderstandings, cultural differences. What we meant as friendly, they interpreted as aggressive. What they meant as warnings, we saw as threats. It escalated fast. They had better weapons, better ships. They destroyed our small fleet in hours. Jake felt sick. They attacked Earth? No, they did something worse. They put a quarantine around our system. Told us if any human ship left, they would destroy Earth. The Coalition found out later but chose to enforce the quarantine, rather than admit one of their species had committed an atrocity. They were young then, still building unity. They feared the truth would break them apart. So you've been trapped here for almost 600 years, Marcus said, horrified. We've been prisoners in our own star system, Andrew agreed. We knew there was a whole galaxy out there, but we couldn't reach it. So we developed technology. We prepared. We swore that one day we would be strong enough that nobody could trap us again. Director Paul Martinez, head of Earth Intelligence, leaned forward. And now you've led them right to us again. That wasn't my intention, Linda said firmly. We didn't know about the quarantine. It was classified. It doesn't matter, Kate said. The secret is out now. The Coalition knows Earth is alive and knows we have military capabilities. This changes everything. Jake looked between the Earth leaders and his alien friends. What happens now? Andrew stood and walked to a window showing Earth below. Now we decide if we're going to be prisoners or if we're going to be free. The Coalition put us in a cage. The question is whether they'll try to keep us there. He turned back to face them. Jake, you're a bridge between two eras of humanity. Captain Hayes, you represent the Coalition. Together maybe you can help prevent a war. Or start one, Paul muttered. Jake stood on Earth for the first time in over 500 years. The grass felt strange under his feet. The wind carried smells he'd forgotten existed. Above him the sky was impossibly blue. He had dreamed of this moment during his time on the distant star, but now that he was here, it felt unreal. You okay? Linda asked. She stood beside him, looking uncomfortable in Earth's gravity. It was heavier than what the distant star maintained. I don't know, Jake admitted. I'm home, but it's not my home. Everything changed. Everyone I knew is dead. Even the language sounds different. English evolved while I was frozen. But your people survived, Linda said. That's what matters. Jake nodded, but he didn't feel as happy as he thought he would. Earth was alive, but it was also angry. Angry at being trapped. Angry at the Coalition. And his return had made everything more complicated. Admiral Morrison approached them. The President wants you both at the Coalition talks. They're starting in an hour. Linda had contacted Ambassador Queln immediately after learning about the quarantine. Queln was horrified and promised to bring the truth to the Coalition Council. He arrived at Earth 3 days later with a delegation of diplomats and historians, including Professor Nina Scott. The talks were held in the United Nations building, a symbol of Earth's unified government. Jake sat between Linda and Admiral Morrison, feeling out of place. Around the large table sat representatives from Earth and the Coalition. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Queln spoke first. On behalf of the Galactic Coalition, I offer our deepest apologies. The quarantine of Earth was unjust. The decision to maintain it was wrong. We allowed fear and politics to imprison an entire species. Apologies don't give us back 600 years. President Chen said coldly. Apologies don't bring back the thousands of people who died believing we were alone in the universe. No, they don't, Queln agreed. But they are a start. The Coalition Council has voted to end the quarantine immediately. All restrictions on human travel are lifted. You are free. Paul Martinez laughed bitterly. Free? You'll forgive us if we don't trust that. The Vrin put us in this cage. The Coalition kept us here. What's to stop you from doing it again if we become inconvenient? Nina Scott spoke up. I have spent the last week accessing classified files. The truth is being compiled into a public report. The galaxy will know what happened to Earth. The Coalition cannot hide this anymore. And the Vrin? Kate Morrison asked. What happens to them? They refuse to acknowledge wrongdoing, Queln said. They claim their actions were justified security measures. They have political allies on the council. This is causing a crisis within the Coalition government. Jake had been quiet, listening. Now he spoke. This isn't about punishment. It's about making sure it never happens again. Everyone turned to look at him. I've been thinking about Captain Morris, Jake continued. She stayed on a dying ship to keep a beacon running. She did that because she believed in hope, in the idea that someone would hear and care. The Endeavor failed in its mission, but that hope survived 500 years. He looked at the Earth representatives. We can't change what happened. We can't bring back those years. But we can decide what comes next. Do we close ourselves off, become what we hate, or do we take the risk of reaching out again? They trapped us, Paul said. They lied to us. Some of them did, Jake agreed. But not all of them. Linda and her crew saved me. Queln is fighting for us. Nina uncovered the truth. The Coalition isn't one thing. It's like humanity, full of good and bad, courage and fear. We can judge them all for the crimes of some, or we can work with the ones trying to do better. President Chen studied Jake. You really believe that? After everything you lost? I believe Captain Morris would want us to try, Jake said quietly. She kept the beacon running because she had faith someone would answer. Linda answered. Now we have a choice about what kind of answer we give to the galaxy. The talks continued for days. Earth demanded formal recognition as a sovereign species with full Coalition rights. They wanted trade agreements, technology exchanges, and most importantly, guarantees that no species could ever be quarantined again. The Coalition negotiators struggled to meet all the demands, but slowly, agreements took shape. The Vrin remained a problem. They refused to apologize and threatened to leave the Coalition if they were punished. This created a split in the council, with some species supporting the Vryn and others demanding justice. Jake traveled to Sanctum Prime to address the council again. This time, the chamber was even more crowded. The galaxy was watching. "I'm not here to demand revenge," Jake told them. "I'm here to talk about fear." The Vryn were afraid of humans. They saw us as a threat, so they locked us away. The Coalition was afraid of conflict, so they maintained the quarantine. Earth was afraid of being trapped again, so we built weapons. Fear has controlled this situation for 600 years. He paused, looking around at the thousands of faces watching him. What if we choose something else? What if we choose to be brave instead? Brave enough to admit mistakes. Brave enough to forgive. Brave enough to trust again? "The Vryn destroyed our ships," someone shouted from the audience. "They threatened to destroy our planet. Why should we forgive that?" "Because the alternative is worse," Jake said. "If we don't forgive, if we demand punishment and revenge, then the Coalition splits apart. Species take sides. Maybe there's a war. And humans, we just got our freedom. Do you think we'll stay neutral in a war caused by our situation? No, we'll fight, and people will die. More than died on the Endeavor. More than suffered during the quarantine." Jake's voice grew stronger. "Or we can be better. The Vryn made a mistake 600 years ago. The Coalition made a mistake by hiding it. Earth made mistakes in that first contact. Everyone messed up. But we're not the people who made those mistakes. We're the people who have to live with the consequences. We can let the past destroy us, or we can build something new." The vote was closer than before, but it passed. The Coalition officially ended all quarantine measures. Earth was recognized as a sovereign member with full rights. A Truth and Reconciliation Committee was formed to investigate the past and prevent future abuses. The Vryn weren't punished, but they were required to issue a formal apology and participate in the investigation. It wasn't perfect. Many people on Earth were angry, feeling justice wasn't served. Many in the Coalition worried about humanity's military power. The Vryn remained defensive and resentful. But it was a start. 6 months later, Jake stood at a construction site in orbit near where the Endeavor still drifted. Human and alien workers moved together, building a memorial station. It would serve as a museum, an embassy, and a reminder. Linda stood beside him watching the construction. "You did it," she said. "You brought humans back to the galaxy." "We did it," Jake corrected. "You found me. You believed Captain Morris's message mattered. None of this happens without you." Below them, Earth turned slowly, blue and green and beautiful. Above them, ships from a dozen species moved between the stars, human ships and alien ships flying together. Jake thought about Captain Morris and the crew who stayed behind. He thought about the 3,000 colonists who never reached their new home. They died believing in a dream of humans among the stars, part of something bigger. "I hope they can see this," Jake said quietly. "I hope they know their dream came true. Just took a little longer than expected." Linda smiled. 500 years late, but you made it. Humanity reached the stars after all." Jake nodded, watching the sun set on Earth below. Tomorrow he would board a new ship, a joint human coalition vessel, and travel to see the wonders of the galaxy. He would meet new species, see new worlds, and help build bridges between Earth and everyone else. The silence was broken. Humanity was home, and the real journey was only beginning.